In an era long past, there existed a rigid belief that a woman's worth hinged solely on her ability to bear children within the initial years of marriage. This archaic notion, however, stands in stark contrast to the progressive values of modern society. Regrettably, remnants of this outdated mindset still linger, perpetuating the harmful stereotype that a woman's purpose rests solely in her ability to conceive and give birth. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Ashley, a 25-year-old homemaker. Despite my tender age, I find myself unable to conceive. My journey has been marred by physical frailty since childhood, rendering me frequently absent from school due to illness. The consequence of my fragile constitution left me withdrawn, with pallid skin and a slight frame, a stark contrast to the vibrant health of my elder sister, Emily, who garnered all the affection and attention from our parents. Emily, a year my senior, embodied the epitome of vitality with her cherubic cheeks and enchanting gaze. Meanwhile, I languished in the shadow of my siblings' robustness, deemed by my parents as a defective entity, a burden they wished would soon be lifted. Their affections lavished solely upon Emily, I was relegated to the sidelines, a mere afterthought in their eyes. In times past, there persisted a belief: a woman who could conceive after 3 years of marriage was deemed worthless. Such notions now appear woefully outdated in the context of modern society. It's a regressive mindset, one that sadly endures where some still harbor the assumption that all women should and will bear children, stigmatizing those unable to do so as worthless. My name is Ashley. I'm a 25-year-old housewife, incapable of conceiving. My journey has been fraught with frailty since childhood, rendering me frequently sickly and weak. With little physical vigor, school often eluded me, leaving me isolated and shy with pallid skin and a slender frame. My parents regarded me as defective and despised my existence, showering affection solely upon my older sister Emily, who, unlike me, enjoyed robust health with rosy cheeks and luminous eyes. I too possessed large eyes, though my frailty cast them in a sickly light. Amidst our affluent upbringing, my parents doted solely on Emily, indulging her every whim while I languished in neglect. Left behind on family excursions due to my frail health, I remained an outsider, deprived of familial mementos. It was a torment, being deemed defective by those who should have offered solace. With no friends to confide in, loneliness became my constant companion. Upon reaching adulthood, my parents swiftly arranged my marriage to Kevin, who received a sizable sum in exchange for caring for a weak, infertile spouse like me. Kevin, ensnared in financial woes, wed me for financial gain. As a full-time housewife, I'd often pondered his true intentions, for he returned home late and inebriated, showing no semblance of affection. "You should count yourself fortunate," it reminded me, echoing my parents' sentiments of worthlessness due to infertility. Yet, despite years of marriage, the prospect of pregnancy remained elusive, a poignant reminder of my perceived inadequacy. Despite the cold treatment from my husband Kevin, there was a beacon of warmth in my married life. It came in the form of my father-in-law, brother-in-law, and his wife, who showed me kindness. My father-in-law, having known me since my marriage at the tender age of 20, embraced me as his own daughter. Meanwhile, my brother-in-law Mike and his wife Maria extended genuine concern towards me, with Maria's care shining particularly bright. "Ashley, you need not conform to others' expectations like a lifeless doll," Mike, employed in a reputable firm, would often remind me. Maria, juggling her own career and managing her interior design office, exuded boundless warmth and cheer. Her caring nature prompted her frequent visits to check up on me, recognizing my solitude and loneliness. What began as simple tea sessions and chats evolved into meaningful lessons and guidance. "Consider pursuing the qualification, even if it's a hobby," Maria encouraged me. Initially disheartened by my lack of formal education, I expressed my doubts. Sensing my despondency, Maria offered sage advice. "Mastering basic household tasks is a foundation for tackling anything. Learning breeds confidence." Inspired by Maria's words, I embarked on studying for a color certification, a step towards newfound skills and self-assurance. Little did I know, my father-in-law had sought counsel from Mike and Maria regarding my well-being, a testament to their unwavering support. "Ashley has a tendency to underestimate herself. It's crucial to find a way to boost her confidence," remarked my father-in-law thoughtfully. "Introducing her to new areas of study could be a catalyst," Maria chimed in, her voice brimming with optimism. Mike and my father-in-law readily embraced her suggestion. Though my parents had often deemed me weak and slow-witted, I discovered a newfound joy in learning. With each certification exam I conquered during my spare moments, a glimmer of confidence illuminated my spirit. Passing those tests brought me immense joy, shattering the belief that I was incapable of achieving anything. Eager to delve deeper into my studies and reach greater heights, I shared my aspirations with Kevin, only to be met with derision. "Must be nice to indulge in useless studying." Kevin's dismissive words no longer pierced me with their usual sting. Instead, they ignited a flame of anger within me, unleashing years of suppressed emotions. "Is that the sentiment one expresses when living off his wife's family's wealth?" I retorted, a departure from my usual submissive demeanor. Caught off guard by my uncharacteristic sarcasm, Kevin recoiled, his facade of dominance crumbling in the face of truth. "Shut up. I'm nothing like you, a defective product. I'll make something of myself." Kevin's words echoed through the room, laden with anger and defiance. Unfazed by his outburst, I retorted, "They say big mouths like yours are all talk." Enraged by my defiance, Kevin lashed out, kicking the wall before storming out, likely seeking solace in drink and revelry. Reflecting on my predicament, I couldn't help but rule my parents' choice of partner for me. Yet their disregard for their frail daughter hinted at their flawed judgment. Marrying Kevin proved to be a grave error, aligning me with a man who squandered my family's wealth for his own pleasure. Ironically, it was Kevin's own family that offered me newfound perspective. Following the confrontation, Kevin vanished for days, presumably with my sister Emily. Despite knowing of their affair, I remained passive, for my parents' unwavering favoritism towards Emily allowed the illicit relationship to persist. Emily, having relinquished custody of her child after divorce, still basked in my parents' affection, a fact that facilitated her clandestine liaison with Kevin. The intentions of my parents, Emily and Kevin, were glaringly evident to me. It seemed they were orchestrating a scenario where Kevin would eventually divorce me. If Emily were to conceive, my parents would undoubtedly prioritize her desires over my well-being. Anticipating the inevitable day when my sister would abscond with my husband, I steeled myself, confident in my ability to withstand the impending storm. Sometime later, we convened at my father-in-law's residence. While I maintained regular visits, Kevin's absence from his family home had become conspicuous. Consumed by pride, Kevin incessantly measured himself against his brother Mike, a graduate of a prestigious university now employed by a major corporation. Though neither my father-in-law nor Mike ever addressed this disparity, Kevin harbored a deep-seated sense of inadequacy. Initially, Kevin had taken pride in marrying into wealth, viewing me as a symbol of his ascent. However, my father-in-law remained indifferent to his son's status, showering affection upon me while adopting a stern demeanor towards Kevin. Though he lavished praise upon Maria, Mike's wife, for her accomplishments, beneath the veneer of admiration lay a simmering jealousy towards his brother's life. Maria is truly remarkable, successful in her career, a devoted mother, and an accomplished woman. Ashley, on the other hand, lacks intelligence and competence, Kevin would remark, thinly veiling his flattery towards Maria with insults directed at me. Though Maria appeared visibly perturbed by his words, she gracefully brushed off Kevin's disparaging remarks. "Ashley is my sister as well, and I find it unacceptable when she's insulted," Maria asserted firmly, her tone brooking no argument. Mike, nodding in solidarity, echoed her sentiment. "Kevin, before comparing Maria and Ashley, consider your own actions," Mike cautioned, his words laced with concern. With a dismissive click of his tongue, Kevin's immaturity became glaringly apparent, leaving me feeling profoundly embarrassed. My father-in-law, his gaze clouded with bitterness, had always treated his sons equally. Yet their disparate paths had left him disheartened. Though he had confided his frustrations to me in the past, today he found his voice, reproaching Kevin sternly. "Have you no shame, Kevin, relying on Ashley's family wealth while shirking your responsibilities? Ashley is a devoted wife. If you're to be a husband, you must learn to support yourself. It's a simple concept," he admonished, his words tinged with disappointment. Flushed with anger, Kevin retorted defensively, "Dad, Ashley was useless, a burden. I'm merely returning the favor." Mike, speaking on behalf of his father, delivered a cutting blow. "Kevin, as your brother, I'm compelled to tell you, your mindset is toxic." Normally quick to anger, Kevin's response was met with a rare silence, broken only by his cursing and abrupt departure. As I moved to intervene, my father-in-law held me back with a heavy sigh. I'm sorry, Ashley. I had hoped marriage would instill in him a sense of responsibility, but it seems that's not the case. With weary shoulders, Mike and Maria slumped beside my father-in-law, mirroring his heavy sigh. Quietly, I lowered my head, preparing to depart, but Maria intercepted me with a reassuring touch. Don't worry, Ashley. Everything is arranged, she assured me with a gentle smile. Nodding in gratitude, I left my father-in-law's abode, returning to the tumultuous atmosphere of my home, where Kevin's rage had left a trail of destruction. The room bore the scars of Kevin's tantrum, strewn with wreckage as he drunkenly bellowed his intentions. I'm divorcing you, the barren one. Emily will be my new wife, he proclaimed triumphantly, reveling in the supposed consent my parents had given. So, Kevin had indeed chosen Emily. My parents had always catered to her whims, even at the cost of my marriage. They didn't object. Kevin had been well aware of my infertility when he married me, exploiting me for his convenience. Yet, it was Emily who desired Kevin, and my parents tacitly condoned their affair. Perhaps now craving grandchildren, they saw Emily's potential pregnancy as an opportunity to unite her with Kevin. Such manipulative machinations were within my parents' capability. When Emily divorced previously, she relinquished custody of her child, deeming them unattractive due to their lack of attachment to her. Emily was self-absorbed, prioritizing her own desires above all else, even her own child. My heart ached for the potential plight of the child born to Emily and Kevin, envisaging a future overshadowed by their self-centeredness. Would such selfish parents be capable of fostering genuine happiness in their offspring? I pondered. Kevin, oblivious to my concerns, derided me, urging me to depart as we finalized our divorce proceedings. I'll pay you alimony, you worthless, he sneered, oblivious to the fact that it would be my parents providing financial support. With a heavy heart, I signed the divorce papers, gathered my essentials, and bid farewell to the house. Choosing to forego seeking solace at my parents' abode, I sought refuge in the comforting embrace of Mike and Maria. I had confided in them about my suspicions regarding Kevin and Emily's affair, a notion Mike reluctantly entertained. Sensing the urgency of the situation, Maria had already begun preparations for my arrival. As I stepped into their home, their shy son peeked out briefly before retreating into hiding. He bore a striking resemblance to Maria and exuded an endearing shyness. Gathering around the table, we deliberated on our plans for the future. Maria, ever the pragmatic thinker, had secured a living arrangement for me, ensuring my safety and well-being amidst the tumult of divorce. With gratitude swelling in my heart, I found solace in the unwavering support of Mike and Maria, determined to navigate the uncertain road ahead with their guidance. I settled into the company housing provided by Maria's interior design firm, preparing to embark on a new chapter as an employee there. Despite my apprehension about entering the workforce for the first time, Maria's reassuring smile offered a beacon of encouragement. Don't worry, Ashley, you got this, she reassured me with unwavering confidence. Under Maria's nurturing guidance and Mike's administrative support, I severed all ties with my family following the divorce. Mike took charge of informing my former father-in-law of our decision, emphasizing our collective disassociation from Kevin. Though saddened by the turn of events, my former father-in-law understood and extended an open invitation for me to continue visiting, now that Kevin was no longer a part of our lives. Thus, I formally liberated myself from the shackles of marriage and embraced newfound independence. With alimony from Kevin and severance funds from my parents, I embarked on my journey towards self-sufficiency. Refusing to rely on my parents' financial support any longer, I returned the severance money untouched, determined to forge my path independently. Embracing my role at Maria's firm, I began by learning the ropes under the tutelage of one of her subordinates, Stephen. A jovial companion around my age, Stephen imparted his knowledge between his hectic schedule, fostering a sense of camaraderie as we navigated the intricacies of the job together. One morning, I arrived at the office early and took the initiative to tidy up, much to Stephen's surprise. Wow, the office looks immaculate, he exclaimed, pitching in to assist with the cleaning. When I offered an apologetic explanation, he tilted his head in confusion. Why apologize when you've done nothing wrong? We're equals here. We work together, he remarked, his words a revelation. It was the first time someone had acknowledged me as an equal. With my history of feeling inferior due to my frailty and inability to conceive, I had always carried a sense of burden. Yet Stephen, with his competence, should have held a higher position, yet he dismissed my concerns with a laugh, emphasizing our equality through collaboration. It was a humbling realization, encountering such kindness and generosity. As we conversed, Maria arrived a bit earlier than usual, casting an observant eye over Stephen and me with a knowing smile. "Ah, Stephen, have you finally gotten to know Ashley better?" she teased, causing Stephen to blush furiously. Perplexed by Maria's comment, I remained clueless until she leaned in to whisper, "Stephen has been wanting to speak with you alone. He's been waiting for the opportunity." Stephen, flustered by Maria's revelation, muttered, "Director, we agreed you wouldn't mention that," before hastily excusing himself to the break room. With a playful slap on my shoulder, Maria left me standing there, utterly bewildered. It wasn't until the realization dawned upon me, coloring my cheeks with embarrassment, that Maria quipped, "Stephen is quite the gentleman. It seems he's taken a liking to you since the day you stepped into the office." "I may be divorced, and I certainly have my flaws," Maria admitted, casting a meaningful glance at Stephen, who stood beside her, presenting her with a freshly brewed cafe latte. She then tenderly patted my bowed head before disclosing a surprising revelation. "You see, the son Maria and Mike have been raising isn't actually their biological child," she confessed, her words carrying a weight of sincerity. "He's a relative's child, taken in after his parents tragically perished in an accident. Essentially, he's been adopted into our family." Maria and Mike had made the conscious decision to prioritize raising a child who had lost everything. As Maria spoke, her gaze shifting between Stephen and me, her voice resonated with warmth and compassion. "When our son first called us Dad and Mom, I couldn't help but shed tears," she revealed, her emotions palpable. "Parenting isn't solely defined by biological ties. Even with blood relations, there are instances where parents and children remain distant. But our son chose us as his parents, not by obligation but by genuine affection. To me, that's far more precious than any bond forged solely through blood." With a gentle sip of the cafe latte prepared by Stephen, I found solace in its warm and soothing aroma, the tension in my heart easing with each comforting sip. Fast forward about 3 years from that moment, and my life had taken a significant turn. I found love again and tied the knot with Stephen just a year after we embarked on our journey together. Yet, when I once again found myself apologizing for my inability to conceive, Stephen's reaction caught me off guard. "Ashley, there's no need for apologies," he chided gently, his tone laced with warmth. "Would you expect me to kneel down and apologize for not being able to have children?" His words resonated deeply within me, dispelling the weight of guilt that I had carried for so long. With a shake of my head, I found solace in his laughter, his cheerful demeanor a balm to my soul. His simple reassurance became a beacon of hope, illuminating a path forward that I had never dared to imagine. Despite remarrying, I remained connected with Maria, Mike, and my former father-in-law. Their unwavering support and genuine happiness for my newfound happiness warmed my heart. Today, we found ourselves on a short trip, exploring a tourist spot that Maria had once described as delightful during her own family visits. As I sat in a chair, patiently awaiting Stephen's return from the restroom, I savored a moment of tranquility at a nearby tea shop, grateful for the love and companionship that now graced my life. Suddenly, a familiar voice pierced through the tranquil ambience. "Ashley," it called out, shattering the peaceful moment. Turning around, I found myself face to face with Kevin, my ex-husband, accompanied by my sister Emily. Emily, adorned in heavy makeup, still possessed her trademark beauty, though it seemed somewhat exaggerated. "You're still moping around, traveling alone after the divorce," she remarked, unaware of my recent remarriage. Ignoring their presence, I eagerly awaited my husband's return from the restroom. Upon his arrival, my husband, perplexed by the unexpected company, apologized for the crowded restroom. His puzzled expression spoke volumes, silently questioning the identity of our uninvited guests. Desperate to depart from the uncomfortable encounter, I urged my husband to leave, hoping to avoid further confrontation. Yet Emily's derisive tone cut through the air as she mocked me for finding another partner despite my perceived shortcomings. Attempting to maintain composure, my husband intervened, asserting his role as my spouse. "I am Ashley's husband," he declared firmly, his gaze unwavering. "And her name is now Ashley Stevens. Furthermore, we are expecting a child." With a gentle pat on my belly, he unveiled our joyous news, leaving Kevin visibly pale. Emily, however, responded with a sneer, casting doubt on the well-being of our unborn child. In a steely tone, my husband responded, "Ashley is currently expecting her second child. Our eldest daughter is a healthy 2-year-old currently in the care of my parents." Kevin's complexion drained at the revelation, mirroring my own astonishment. The news of my second pregnancy had initially caught me off guard. I vividly recall my disbelief when the doctor at the maternity clinic confirmed my ability to conceive, contrary to the beliefs instilled in me by my parents. My parents had always led me to believe that I was unable to bear children, a notion I had unquestioningly accepted. Yet it turned out that my body was perfectly capable of conception. When I shared the news with my husband, he was elated. However, it left me wondering why I had never conceived during my marriage to Kevin. Seeking answers, I confided in Maria, who, after a moment of contemplation, voiced a troubling hypothesis. According to Maria, there was a possibility that my parents had deceived me all along. It was likely that they had discouraged me from having children, fearing the potential complications that could arise from my fragile health. In fact, they might have gone as far as instructing Kevin to use contraception to prevent pregnancy. It was a shocking revelation, one that shed light on the manipulative tactics employed by my own family. Having remarried, Stephen and I welcomed a healthy baby girl into our family, followed by a son during my second pregnancy, both of whom thrived. Yet, despite the joy of motherhood, I couldn't shake off the lingering burden of guilt stemming from my parents' deceitful machinations. As Stephen and I prepared to depart, Emily's cruel words pierced through the air, her smirk laden with malice. Had terminated Kevin's pregnancy. It was a botched attempt, she jeered callously, admitting to aborting the fetus due to potential disabilities. Kevin, desperate and pleading, implored me to relinquish one of my children, fearing he would be disowned otherwise. Emily's laughter echoed with malicious glee. Fueled by rage, I was on the verge of erupting, but Stephen's firm grip on my arm halted me. With a contemptuous glare at Kevin and Emily, Stephen's voice dripped with disdain. "Save your vile remarks for your own demise," he spat out, his disgust palpable. Without another word, he guided me away, refusing to dignify their cruelty with a response. I followed suit, casting a final disdainful glance over my shoulder, feeling as though I had glimpsed the depths of depravity reserved for their unborn child. In due time, I welcomed a baby boy into the world, adding to the challenges of caring for my 2-year-old daughter and newborn son. Despite the demands of motherhood, my husband stood by my side, offering his unwavering support. Meanwhile, my ex-husband Kevin found himself deserted by Emily, left to fend for himself as his financial woes mounted. Rejected by my former father-in-law and brother-in-law when he sought assistance, Kevin's predicament left them dumbfounded. As for my selfish parents and sister Emily, their actions eventually led to their downfall. Emily's reckless pursuits, including affairs with married men, resulted in numerous lawsuits and hefty alimony payments. Gradually, her fortune dwindled, and her reputation crumbled. Unable to intervene, my parents watched helplessly as Emily's actions drained their assets. To compound matters, Emily's ill-advised dealings with a dubious company left her ensnared in a web of debt, pursued by relentless creditors. My parents and Emily have fallen on hard times, but their plight no longer weighs on me. They are mere blood ties, estranged from my true family, my loving husband and our 2 precious children. Their well-being is my sole concern now. As I tended to our son's needs, my husband delighted in play with our daughter, their laughter filling our home. Observing their joyous interaction, a wave of gratitude washed over me. Caught up in the moment, I found myself smiling uncontrollably. My husband, noticing my expression, inquired, "What's on your mind, Ashley?" "I'm just overwhelmed with happiness to be with you, Stephen," I confessed. With a playful grin, he teased, "Well, you're Mrs. Stephen too." His light-hearted remark elicited laughter from all of us, filling our hearts with warmth and contentment. "You're useless. You can't even handle the chores or take care of the kids, let alone pay the alimony," Kyle spat out as he finally showed up at the hospital 3 weeks after my traffic accident. His harsh words cut through me as I lay there in the hospital bed, hoping he had come out of concern. Instead, he proved to be a disappointment. I sighed deeply. To be honest, I had already been considering a divorce. I didn't expect Kyle to bring it up now, but I guess I should be thankful. It saved us both some trouble. "Fine," I agreed quickly, which surprised Kyle. Little did he know, I was already one step ahead. I wanted to tell him that I knew what he was planning and that I was silently laughing at him in my head. "My name is Sarah. I'm a 40-year-old housewife living with my husband, Kyle, and our 7-year-old daughter, Lisa. Kyle and I met during a group blind date and got married when I was 30. He was easy to talk to, and eventually, I fell for him. Kyle was charming and the most handsome man at the table when we first met. When he expressed his interest in me, I felt flattered and proud. Kyle was incredibly romantic in our early days. He would surprise me with dessert plates and bouquets at fancy restaurants for my birthdays, take me on trips for our anniversaries, and write heartfelt letters at just the right moments. I felt so lucky to have him and eagerly accepted his marriage proposal, imagining a life full of surprises and excitement even after marriage. But once we were married, things took a turn. "Hey Sarah, my dinner isn't ready yet. I've been working all day, and you can't even have dinner prepared when I get back. You're so lazy." Once married life began, he started demanding like he was the master of the house and I was supposed to be his caretaker. At first, I was shocked by the change in him. I thought he was just joking. When we were dating, we used to laugh at each other's silly jokes. We imagined a sweet newlywed life where we called each other by cute nicknames and stayed lovey-dovey even after having kids. But it turned out he wasn't joking at all. He treated me like a servant, or something even worse. At first, I would laugh it off, thinking he was joking. But gradually I realized he was serious. He really saw me as his caretaker, and that was frightening. After we got married, I had to quit my job, and we depended on the money Kyle earned. I was scared that if I didn't do as he said, he might cut me off financially, so I felt trapped. Honestly, Kyle's income wasn't great. I was making more when I was working. Kyle only finished high school and jumped from one job to another. His unstable work history continued, quitting jobs every year or two. It seemed Kyle felt insecure about his background and took out his frustrations on me. "I'm sorry I got delayed with some errands," I told him once. "Don't make excuses, just hurry up and make it," Kyle replied, sitting down with a cold beer. This had become a common scene, but each time it happened, it chipped away at the person I used to be. I sighed and started cooking. My marriage made me miserable, but I managed to get by. The following year, our daughter Lisa was born, and my days became a series of struggles. As expected, Kyle didn't help much with Lisa. However, he would spoil her by buying her any candy or toy she wanted. I tried to raise Lisa properly, scolding her when needed, which made her cling to Kyle even more. "Lisa, you like Daddy, don't you?" Kyle asked her once. "Yeah, Daddy is cool. I love Daddy," Lisa replied. "I knew it, I'm super dad," Kyle said, looking at me smugly. It was frustrating, but I couldn't help feeling glad that Lisa loved her father. I just sighed again. Despite his spoiling her, Kyle never attended any of Lisa's kindergarten events like sports festivals or recitals. "You know there's a parent-child race at Lisa's sports festival. Could you participate?" I asked him. "Huh? Why me? You're free that day, you do it," he responded. "I'm busy with work every day, but the sports festival could be a great time for us to bond as parents. It's on a holiday, so you won't have to work," I said. "Shut up. We're already close enough. Maybe you should work on your relationship with Lisa. She thinks you're mean, you know. You might want to fix that," Kyle said, laughing as he left for work. He called himself Super Dad, yet he never showed up to school events. I was worried that Kyle's habit of being easy on himself but hard on others might influence Lisa. He continued to leave all the housework and childcare to me and was lazy at home. Now Lisa is 5 years old and ready to start elementary school, but Kyle was still jumping from job to job. He had just quit his factory job last month and moved to a food and beverage company. "I'll be working weekends at my new job since it's in the food industry," he said. "Looks like we'll hardly see each other then," I replied. "Can't be helped, it's work," he said. Honestly, I was relieved because I knew that with Kyle gone, my days would be a bit easier. I was tired of Kyle ordering me around on weekends. Now, I wouldn't have to be nagged by him to clean the floor or serve meals quickly. However, with Kyle out on weekends, Lisa would be sad. It's better for kids to spend holidays with the whole family. "I have work, so please let Lisa know," Kyle said. I couldn't really argue with Kyle since he was the one bringing in the money. Reluctantly, I went to tell Lisa. "I'm sorry, but Daddy won't be able to go out with you on his day off," I said, expecting her to be upset. I told her with a frown, but contrary to my expectations, Lisa seemed unconcerned. "It's okay. If you're okay with it, then it's fine. You know he's not going to be here on all weekends, right?" Daddy has been smelling strange lately, she said. A strange smell? I asked, puzzled. Lisa nodded and went back to her room. What on earth was she talking about? I've been so busy with housework and taking care of our child that I hadn't noticed much about Kyle lately. Our marriage was not like it used to be, and I tried to avoid being around Kyle to keep things calm. The strange smell Lisa mentioned might be from the factory, I thought. Factories often use special solvents, so it made sense that Kyle could come home with a weird smell. If that was the case, the smell would probably go away soon. Kids are really honest, which is what makes them so endearing. Despite what he said, Kyle started leaving the house early in the morning even on his days off, which was odd. He also left every weekday. If he was working weekends, he should have a day off during the week. He left without saying anything to me, so I couldn't tell if he was going to work or not. I became curious about what he was doing, leaving so early even on his days off. One day, I decided to follow him. I asked Kyle, "You seem to be going out every day off. What are you doing?" Kyle looked confused for a moment, then answered in an annoyed tone while scratching his head, "I'm working. I go to work voluntarily." "Really? But you should take care of yourself or your body won't hold up," I replied. "Shut up. Don't complain about my job," Kyle snapped back. I didn't understand why he got so angry when he often complained about my housework and child rearing. I didn't believe what Kyle said. There's no way he, who usually avoids trouble, would go to work voluntarily on his days off. I knew this from watching him closely over the years. If he was that passionate about work, he would have stayed at his previous job longer. I also started paying attention to the strange smell that Lisa mentioned. Indeed, Kyle came home with a sweet, strong fragrance. This strange smell was not from the factory. Why hadn't I noticed this before? I blamed myself for being so naive and vowed not to make the same mistake again. From then on, I decided to watch Kyle more carefully, especially on weekdays when he said he was going to work. He seemed to wake up an hour earlier than usual and took extra care grooming himself. He appeared to be in a good mood on those days, which vary from week to week, sometimes on a Monday, sometimes on a Thursday. But it was clear that Kyle was happy on those days. One day, when he left the house, I went into his room to look for any clues. I felt like a detective searching the house. Since I always cleaned Kyle's room, I knew it well and didn't feel bad about snooping around. If Kyle had hidden anything, it would be in a place not easily seen. I searched carefully under the desk and bed. Finally, hidden in a candy tin in the closet, I found a bunch of letters. What were these? All the letters were from the same person named Patricia. They had been sent through the mail. The oldest letter was from 4 months ago, and the newest was from yesterday. As I read the letters, I saw phrases like, "I regretted when we broke up, but now I really love you, and I want to go back to the time when I was with you." It sounded like something a lovesick teenager would say. At first, I thought maybe Kyle's ex-girlfriend was sending these letters on her own, but then I read a line that worried me. "I'm glad you like me again. I'm looking forward to our next date." This was from last week. It looked like Kyle was seeing this Patricia. Today, he was definitely up to something. I took photos of the letters with my smartphone as evidence. I thought about taking the letters, but I didn't want to make Kyle suspicious. Even with these letters, I felt I didn't have enough proof. After thinking it over, I decided to hire a private investigator to check on Kyle. 3 weeks later, the investigator gave me the results. He quickly brought photos of Kyle and Patricia close together in the park at night, and even a recording of them saying, "I love you" to each other. I accepted the facts calmly. With solid proof in hand, I went to the municipal office and came back with a divorce form. Now that I knew Kyle was cheating, I had no reason to stay with him. I planned to confront him with the divorce papers the next time something happened. I returned home and let out a deep sigh. I was acting resolute, but honestly, I was heartbroken. I was upset with myself for having married someone as careless as Kyle. I was thinking about resting a bit before making dinner when my phone rang. "Hello?" "Yes, Sarah, do you have time to talk?" "Yes, what's going on?" I was surprised to get a call from my father. He usually doesn't call me. "Actually, your mother and I were talking yesterday, and we're thinking about transferring our assets to you soon." "Huh? What happened?" My father ran a company that sold imported goods to Japanese corporations. I was the daughter of a big company president, but I never told Kyle about this. I thought it would make me sound boastful, especially since Kyle jumped from one job to another. "We're getting old and thinking about retiring. We thought about keeping the company going but didn't want to push it onto you, our only daughter, so we've decided to step back." "I see." I felt guilty about not taking over the company, but my parents respected my decision and had planned for the future. I was deeply touched by their thoughtfulness. "We're thinking of handing over our assets to you. Our total wealth is $17 million, but we're fine with just $3 million. We've decided to give you the remaining $15 million. $15 million. I was shocked. That was more money than I could ever imagine earning in my lifetime. "Yes, there will probably be inheritance tax, but you'll still have plenty left. You won't have to worry about living expenses for the rest of your life," Dad said. "Thank you." I expressed my deepest gratitude to my father and mother and hung up. Soon, $17 million would be coming my way. With that money, I wouldn't have any worries, even if I divorced Kyle. No offense to him, but he probably couldn't earn that much. I felt relieved and was in a daze for a while. Glancing at the clock, it was 6:00 p.m. I realized I needed to make dinner and checked the fridge, but there were no groceries left. I got ready to go shopping at the supermarket. My heart was light, but I also felt a sense of urgency that Kyle might come home soon. As I was hurrying across the last crosswalk to the supermarket, the light turned green. "Watch out," someone yelled, but it was too late. My body was already in the air, and then I hit the ground hard. The sharp pain shot through my head, and without understanding what had happened, I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was lying on a hospital bed. The first thing I saw when I opened my eyes were my parents and Lisa. "Sarah, thank goodness," Mom said. Lisa was crying next to me. I gently stroked her head. "You were hit by a car and broke both legs. They say it will take 5 months to fully recover." I felt dizzy thinking about being out of action for so long. From that day on, I was stuck in a wheelchair. Although the nurses took care of me, I felt frustrated and annoyed because I couldn't use my legs. During my stay in the hospital, my parents and friends visited me. My parents were now taking care of Lisa, since Kyle was always at work. I thought that was better for her. I was glad everyone visited, but Kyle never came. I started to doubt his care, thinking, aren't we husband and wife? However, 1 week after I was hospitalized, Kyle finally showed up. "Hey, feeling good?" Kyle asked sarcastically. "Yeah, man, it's a mess at home without me," I replied lightly. Kyle always complained about my housework. As soon as he spoke, showing no empathy, I sighed. I had thought he would be at least a little worried about me. "What can I do? I was in a car accident." I snapped back when Kyle looked at me with disdain and said, "You're useless if you can't do housework or take care of the child. That's the worst. And you should pay alimony." He said such horrible things to his hospitalized wife. Initially, I had hoped Kyle came to visit out of concern, but he was still disappointing. I sighed deeply. Honestly, I have been thinking about getting a divorce myself. I hadn't expected Kyle to bring up divorce today, but it saved me the trouble of arguing. "Sure," I said, and Kyle looked surprised when I agreed. "Unfortunately, I know what you're up to," I wanted to say, laughing inside. Instead, I pulled out a filled-in divorce form from a bag my mother had brought and held it in front of Kyle's face. "You already had this." Kyle was briefly confused, his eyes wide, but then he took the divorce notice from me and filled in his name and address right there. I felt relieved, knowing I wouldn't have to see Kyle's face ever again. I wanted to tell him the feeling was mutual, but I just watched him leave silently. Probably Kyle will remarry Patricia after the divorce. I don't know what kind of woman Patricia is, but it's sad to think she's going to marry someone as controlling and unpleasant as Kyle. I thought to myself. I felt a bit guilty about Lisa, but deciding to leave was something I had thought about for a long time. I promised myself I would take good care of Lisa. A month after Kyle left, my life was peaceful. The time without my husband nagging me felt like heaven. I was released from the hospital and started physical therapy. I decided to stay at my parents' house until my leg healed. My parents were angry at Kyle when they learned about the divorce, but they stopped pressing the issue when I told them I wanted to forget about him. Lisa doesn't seem lonely even without her father around and is going to elementary school happily, I observed. In the end, Lisa also noticed Kyle's domineering behavior and probably didn't see him as a father anymore. I was convinced that divorcing Kyle was the right decision, but one afternoon I got a call on my mobile phone. I ignored it when I saw Kyle's name, but the phone kept ringing nonstop. Eventually, I answered the call. "Hey Sarah, when are you coming back?" Kyle's words made no sense to me, and he sounded like he was about to start yelling. What do you mean coming back? You're married to Patricia, didn't you? I replied. When I mentioned Patricia's name, Kyle sounded surprised and exclaimed, How do you know that? Did you think I didn't know you cheated? That's why I asked for alimony. Yes, that's right, but alimony and child support, I can't pay that. Why do I have to pay alimony anyway? You, who never did the housework, should be the one to pay, Kyle argued. I was shocked to hear Kyle's argument. I had requested alimony and child support through a lawyer, but he hadn't paid yet. I knew Kyle didn't have a lot of money, but he should find a way to pay. Yet here he was saying something ridiculous like I should be the one to pay alimony. I gathered evidence of your affair through a detective agency. The lawyer has seen it. It seems Kyle had already seen the evidence from the detective agency. That would make things easier, but him calling me was ridiculous. I wanted a divorce even before I found out about the affair because you never helped with housework or childcare, and you complained all the time. I'm not your housekeeper, you know. But it's good you're married now. You have someone else to look after you. But here's the thing. Patricia can't do housework. Before we got married, she said, leave everything to me. But once we got married, her cooking is terrible, and she doesn't clean. I would have been better off with you. Marry me again. After all, you don't have any money, right? Lisa liked me too, didn't she? Kyle said, which annoyed me. What are you talking about? You divorced me and remarried. You're her partner, not my responsibility. And sorry to say, Lisa doesn't like you. And I have money. Don't lie to me. There's no way you have money. You were a housewife. You can't live without me. I had no intentions of telling Kyle about the fortune I inherited from my parents, but faced with his aggressive attitude, I had no choice but to reveal it. My parents are CEOs. Recently, I inherited their assets. It's around $52 million in total, so I can live without working for the rest of my life, I calmly stated over the phone, picturing Kyle's stunned reaction on the other end. You're lying. There's no way you have such a huge amount of money, Kyle retorted skeptically. It's true. If you want, I can have my parents tell you, I replied, sensing Kyle's disbelief beginning to waver. With that, Kyle finally seemed to believe my words and fell silent. Then he exploded, if it's true, why didn't you tell me? Well, I wanted to tell you, but I knew about your affair and I had already formed a low opinion of you. At that point, there was no issue of property distribution, and I hadn't yet inherited the assets, I explained calmly, not willing to engage in a heated argument. Kyle bit his lip in frustration. He probably never imagined I had such assets. He must have been regretting that he should have never divorced me, but I was resolute. I didn't want to endure his terrible behavior anymore. Can I hang up now? Please pay the alimony properly, reflect on your actions, and never call me again. Goodbye, I said firmly before hanging up. Immediately, I blocked Kyle's number so he couldn't call anymore. Mom, who were you talking to? Lisa walked into the room, curious. Just a friend, I replied, smiling at Lisa. But Lisa, do you want to go to the amusement park this weekend? Yes, Lisa beamed with happiness. Seeing her smile reminded me that her happiness was all that mattered to me. A few days later, I heard that Kyle had broken up with his new wife, Patricia. They argued because she wouldn't do housework, and Patricia ended up leaving him. Kyle, having been divorced twice in a short time, would probably find it hard to get married again. I hoped he would stay single for a while to prevent more people from getting hurt. After the divorce, Kyle lost his motivation and quit his job at the restaurant. He would probably find another job, but it might take him some time to get his life back on track. I felt a twinge of sympathy for him, but his problems were of his own making. I had blocked his calls so he couldn't ask me for money, and I avoided places where we used to go together. In my life, Kyle had virtually disappeared. Eventually, Kyle paid the alimony but ended up in debt. I didn't know how he would manage, but I hoped he learned from his mistakes. I continued to live comfortably at my parents' house. They told us we could stay as long as we liked. After my legs fully healed, I started part-time work at a local flower shop. Even though I didn't need to work, I found it better to be active and leave the house. I worked hard on weekdays and spent weekends having fun with Lisa and my parents. I found more joy in life than before and wanted to keep living happily with the people I loved. I cherished these happy moments, especially when I saw Lisa's smile.
When I returned home from our week-long honeymoon, strange noises greeted me as I walked through the door. Anxiety set in, I feared that the house might have been broken into while we were away. Did you hear that? Maybe there's someone inside. Should we call the police? I asked my husband, but he dismissed my concerns with a calm, "It's all right." He strode into the house, and I hurried after him, my heart racing. To my relief, it wasn't burglars but my mother-in-law Kelly and my sister-in-law Jo. They were inside, seemingly at ease. I was puzzled, wondering why they were there. Apparently, they had volunteered to look after the house while we were gone, and my husband had given them a key. I had assumed they would leave once we returned. "It's getting dark. If you don't go home soon, you'll be out of time," I suggested, hoping they'd take the hint. Instead of leaving, they settled in, commandeering the living room and even taking a shower without asking. I hoped they would depart the next morning, but when I came home from work, they were still there. Unable to tolerate the intrusion any longer, I asked my husband to ask them to leave. His response shocked me. "We all live together now, so if you don't like it, you can leave." He was suggesting that I move out instead. I packed a few essentials and left with just a carry-on. My name is Izzy. I'm a 29-year-old magazine editor. 3 years ago, I met my current husband Alex through a friend. Prior to him, I had little relationship experience, but I was drawn to his decisive and dependable nature. He expressed his love first and after 3 years of dating proposed. We married, and while searching for a new home and wedding venue, Alex's reliability made everything run smoothly. I enjoyed our life together in the new house. But my mother-in-law Kelly and sister-in-law Jo were a constant source of stress. My father-in-law had passed away a decade ago, leaving Alex's family as just Kelly and 27-year-old Jo. I had minimal contact with them before our marriage and hoped to maintain a polite distance. However, after the wedding, their presence became increasingly intrusive. Kelly began calling almost daily, demanding more money. "Can you increase my allowance? I can't live decently on what you give me. Just $200 more would be enough," she pleaded. I told her to ask Alex, as he was in charge of finances. She accused me of being extravagant and warned me that not taking care of my in-laws would bring bad karma. Despite my attempts to redirect her to Alex, she blamed me for her financial troubles. Kelly also insisted that I visit her more often, help with chores, and send her favorite foods monthly. While Kelly harangued me over the phone, Jo started showing up unannounced, adding to my stress. While I was cooking dinner, Kelly frequently dropped by unannounced, saying things like, "I was in the neighborhood, so I thought I'd pop in. Is dinner ready yet? I'm starving. Hurry up." She would make herself comfortable on the sofa, waiting for me to finish cooking, and then leave after eating. Despite my repeated requests for her to give me notice before visiting and to come less often, she always brushed off my concerns. "Don't worry about it, I'm just stopping by. Just feed me whatever," she'd say dismissively. I tried to address the issue with Alex, and he did speak to both Kelly and Jo about their behavior. Despite this, I didn't feel it was appropriate to be too harsh with them, given that Jo was Alex's sister. 6 months into our marriage, Alex and I finally went on our long-awaited honeymoon in Europe, which had been postponed due to our busy schedules. We enjoyed every moment, unwinding and escaping from daily stress. However, when we returned home after a smooth week-long trip, we were greeted by strange noises coming from inside the house. Panic set in as I wondered if we were dealing with a burglary. "Did you hear that? Maybe there's someone in the house. Shouldn't we call the police?" I asked Alex, but he didn't seem concerned at all. "It's all right," he said calmly, walking into the house as if nothing was wrong. I quickly followed Alex into the house and was relieved to find Kelly and Jo instead of burglars. However, I was puzzled about why they were there. "Oh, you're back. Did you bring me a souvenir? The bracelet I asked for? Did you get it?" Kelly asked, clearly expecting something. "Of course not, it was too expensive," she replied when I said I hadn't. While the three of them chatted away happily, I couldn't help but wonder about their presence. Why are you guys here?" I asked. Kelly looked at me with a hint of annoyance. Are you saying our presence is a nuisance? An empty house is an easy target for burglars while you were on vacation. We went out of our way to protect it, so you should be grateful. Apparently, they had offered to watch the house while we were away, and Alex had given them the key. I had told Alex that he should have discussed this with me first. He replied that he hadn't had time because they had approached him at the last minute. What was done, so I tried to accept that the house was safe thanks to their efforts. As I looked around, however, I saw the extent of the mess they had left. Every room was cluttered with their belongings. Joe's clothes were crammed into the closet, with the overflow strewn across the floor. In the living room, clothes, bags, remote controls, comic books, and other items were scattered everywhere, not just on the table but also on the floor. After a long flight, I was exhausted and frustrated by the thought of cleaning up all this mess. That wasn't the only issue at hand. I had hoped that once we arrived home, Kelly and Joe would leave, but they didn't. It's going to be dark soon. If you don't go home now, you'll be stuck here, I said, trying to be polite. Why don't you let us take it easy today? Kelly responded. Not only did they refuse to leave, but they also took over the living room and started taking showers without asking. They had completely made themselves at home. Expected them to leave the next morning, but there was no sign of them moving out. When I came home from work, they were still there. I told them it was time for them to go. We're family. You don't have to worry about us. Just pretend we're not here, they insisted. Despite their insistence that I ignore their presence, I was the one who ended up cooking, cleaning, and doing the laundry. I felt overwhelmed and frustrated. If I didn't take action, they seemed ready to stay as long as they wanted. I decided I needed to ask Alex to intervene and ask them to leave. As I was tidying up my room, I noticed that one of my limited edition perfumes, worth over $300 and no longer available for sale, was missing. I had been using it sparingly. Panic set in and I asked Kelly if she had seen it, but she claimed she didn't even know I had perfume. When I questioned Joe, she pulled out the bottle from her bag and handed it to me. To my dismay, it was nearly empty. I had been careful with my limited edition perfume, and there was still more than 6% left. When I confronted Joe about the missing perfume, she simply said, "It smells nice, doesn't it?" My friend liked it too, so I lent it to her. She'd offered no apology, and my frustration boiled over. Why did you use it without asking? What you're doing is theft. Didn't you learn that stealing from others is wrong? I demanded. Joe brushed off my anger. I only borrowed it for a moment. Why are you overreacting? If you're so concerned, just take back what's left. If you borrowed it, then give me back what you used, I'd insisted. Fine, but since it's already used, I'll only give you half the money, she retorted. I don't want the money, I want the perfume back, I said firmly. Joe rolled her eyes. You're so unreasonable over a bottle of perfume. I know the brand and it shouldn't be that expensive. She checked the price on her phone and was taken aback. Holy cow, why is it so expensive? Are you really going to spend $300 on perfume? If it's that important, maybe you should have mentioned it. Seeing her reaction, I felt even more disheartened. It's valuable to me, and I only used it inside the house. I never imagined I'd have a relative come into my room and use my things without permission. As we argued, Alex walked in. What's all this fuss about? Alex, she used my perfume and called me a thief, I said, leaving Joe in the living room while I explained everything to him in the bedroom. I'm at my limit. I need you to ask them to leave. Don't get so worked up over something minor, Alex replied dismissively. Also, I haven't mentioned that they're going to be living with us here. My jaw dropped at his unexpected announcement. My mom's house was old and falling apart, so she was considering repairs or moving. We have extra rooms and it's more cost-effective for her to stay here. We decided to live together. Why didn't you talk to me about this? Do you own the house alone? I'm paying the mortgage too. Don't blame me, my mom decided to sell her house on her own. I protested. Alex's response was blunt. "We're living together now, so if you don't like it, you can leave." His decision, made without my input, and his suggestion that I leave left me feeling distant and hurt. I realized my feelings for him were fading. "I understand," I said quietly. I started packing the essentials into my carry-on case. Alex didn't try to stop me but remarked that running away after a fight was immature before walking out of the bedroom. Kelly and Joe watched with smirks as I packed, and as soon as I left the house, they locked the door behind me. I had no intention of returning. I headed to a hotel and called my boss, with whom I regularly consulted, to request a few days off. During my time off, I searched for an apartment and informed my parents that I had separated from Alex, explaining the situation. They asked what my next steps were, and I told them I planned to get a divorce. In the meantime, Alex sent me a text. "If you're sorry, you can come back. Mommy and Joe both say they'd forgive you." When I called him to discuss the divorce, he initially resisted, saying, "You're divorcing me over this. You just need to put up with it a little longer." Eventually, he recognized my determination and agreed to the divorce. From that point, everything progressed smoothly, and the divorce was finalized within 6 months. I wanted to end things as quickly as possible, so we swiftly divided our assets and I handed over the house to him. We had been married for less than a year and now we were divorced. My friends and coworkers were concerned and curious about what had happened. Initially, I shrugged off their questions, unable to share the details. But as I processed everything, I became more open about the situation. When I told them the full story, their reactions were unanimous. "That's impossible." I appreciated the sympathy from my friends and coworkers. It made me feel a bit better, knowing they were supportive of my situation. After moving out and living alone, I threw myself into work with renewed intensity. Instead of spending time on household chores, I took on 3 times as many projects as usual and even helped out colleagues who were overwhelmed. My boss noticed my dedication and expressed concern, but as I immersed myself in work, the memories of my difficult times resurfaced and I began to blame myself. Despite being grateful for the distraction work provided, Alex called me about 5 months after the divorce. I had left most of my belongings behind when I moved out, so I answered the phone thinking it might be about that. Alex started by asking what I was doing and if I was living alone. His approach seemed unusual because he was typically impatient with vague conversations. I didn't want to waste time, so I asked directly why he was calling. He said he wanted to get back together. I had no interest in rekindling the relationship, so I said no and attempted to end the call. But Alex quickly interjected. "Wait, there's something I haven't told you yet." "I'm busy, so make it quick," I replied. He continued, "Can you lend me some money? I'm struggling to pay the mortgage. It used to be a joint responsibility, so I understand it's hard to manage alone." I knew the amount Alex needed wasn't that significant, but he explained that he had been expecting a raise a few months ago that never materialized. He had also been informed that his performance wouldn't warrant any future increases. Faced with this, he decided to look for a new job, hoping for better conditions. Unfortunately, he only found a lower-paying position and had yet to secure a new role. Regardless of his situation, I wasn't willing to lend him any money. Told him not to contact me again. "You're still single, right? No one will want a middle-aged divorcee like you. You'd be better off reconciling with me," he said. I simply replied, "No, thank you," and ended the call. I couldn't understand why I had fallen for and married him. I was deeply disappointed in my own judgment. After that, Alex, Kelly, and Joe all began to harass me. Through our conversations, I learned that they believed Alex was earning a substantial income due to us buying a new house and having a lavish wedding. Since their allowance hadn't increased and Alex had refused to do so, they thought I was the one preventing it. They had been pleased to live comfortably after I left, but when they discovered Alex's salary was lower than expected, they panicked. They seemed to think that men were paid more than women, but my salary was actually higher than his. I wanted to block all of them on my phone, but Alex knew where I worked and could easily find me. I was anxious that Alex might call me at work or even show up at my office, so I answered his calls a few times. He consistently complained about Kelly and Joe spending too much money and running out of savings. They had started working part-time but couldn't make ends meet because they spent their earnings so quickly. It seemed like every conversation revolved around money. I hoped that if I told him I was in a similar financial situation, he might stop calling. I decided to use this approach the next time he reached out. That day, as usual, Alex called and said, "I need money. I don't have enough to pay the mortgage this month." I replied, "Actually, I'm planning to resign from my job soon. I've spent most of my savings, so I need some money from you. If you think I'm lying, you can check with someone at my work." Alex simply said, "I see," and ended the call. After that, he stopped contacting me. When I shared this with a friend, she informed me that Alex's situation was even worse than I had realized. He had ended up with a lower-paying job, and most of his salary went towards the mortgage. Additionally, Joe had an affair with her part-time job manager, who was married. When his wife discovered the affair, she fired Joe and filed a civil lawsuit against her. Initially, Joe claimed that the manager had pursued her and she didn't know he was married. However, text exchanges revealed she was aware of his wife's pregnancy and still pursued him. The manager and his wife divorced, and Joe faced a substantial compensation claim. Joe's affair and subsequent lawsuit led to her losing both her job and her friends. Alex's family ended up covering the mortgage and the debt from the lawsuit, effectively living in a cycle of debt. Kelly, meanwhile, complained that her friends had grandchildren while her own children were still single and struggling. Alex often lamented to this friend about his daily arguments with Kelly, his current single status, and how women no longer showed interest in him. He had lost weight and looked disheveled, aging far beyond his years. His friend rolled her eyes at his complaints. Had shared the reasons for my divorce with many people, and now this friend was the only one Alex had left to confide in. She was the one who introduced us and felt a sense of responsibility for how things turned out. Although she found his constant drama oddly intriguing, she stayed in touch with him to keep him away from me. As for me, I recently launched a web magazine with a university friend. I left from a previous job and invested most of my savings into the startup. Though it's a small venture and I handle many tasks on my own, I am thrilled by the new challenges. Where I once felt daunted by new beginnings, I now manage them with confidence, having grown from past obstacles. I've also started a new relationship with someone I met at work. He respects my feelings and supports me, helping me realize that Alex was not a decisive leader, but simply selfish. For a while after my divorce, I doubted that I would ever marry or date again. Now I am able to think positively and cherish the new happiness in my life.
My name is Molly, and I'm 32 years old. I'm married to Justin, who is 35 and works in an office. I work as a freelance fashion designer from home. My career started with many small, exciting projects, but it wasn't until I landed a significant project with a substantial paycheck that things really changed. This opportunity allowed Justin and me to move into a luxurious high-rise apartment, something I had always wanted. Since I was the one who had dreamed of living in such a place, I agreed to cover the monthly rent myself. Justin was thrilled about the new apartment, and I thought our future together looked bright. I couldn't have anticipated what was about to happen next. One day, Justin brought his 65-year-old mother, Betty, to our place. Her husband had passed away 3 years ago, and she had been living alone since then. "Hi, Molly," Betty greeted me. "Hi, Betty, it's been a while. What's going on?" "Well," Justin began awkwardly, "she wants to move in with us." "Why?" I asked, surprised. Justin explained that Betty's house was deteriorating, and she wanted to move to a better place. She didn't have much money, so she hoped to stay with us temporarily. I understood the situation but wasn't thrilled about it. Our apartment was a haven for just the two of us, and Betty, whom I barely knew, felt like a stranger. I was reluctant to have her join us. Please, Justin said, taking my hands. Her house is falling apart. I promise I'll urge her to find a smaller, newer place as soon as possible. Reluctantly, I agreed, thinking it would only be for a short while. A month later, Betty moved in. Thank you so much for letting me stay in this wonderful apartment, she said. No problem, I replied with a forced smile. Please make yourself at home. But soon after settling in, Betty approached me with an unexpected request. Sorry to dive right in, but may I borrow some money? I was taken aback. As soon as she had unpacked her things, she was asking me for money. I was taken aback by Betty's directness. I've been seeing the doctor a lot lately, and it's been costing me money. I just need a little bit, please. How much are you asking for? I inquired. Around $300 for now, she said. Given her age, it wasn't surprising that she might be facing health issues, and I could understand that medical expenses could add up quickly. I reached into my purse, found $650, and handed it to her. Then, one day, Justin came to me with a request. I was unsettled, fearing it might be related to Betty. You know, we should get a new car, he said. I was so surprised that I nearly fell out of my chair. What do you mean? We just bought a car 2 years ago. Well, it's too small, Justin explained. I couldn't understand why the size of the car mattered. It was sufficient for the two of us, or three if you counted Betty. Why did the size need to change? My mom doesn't like it, Justin added. I was baffled. Why was Betty complaining about a car that wasn't hers? She wants a more luxurious car, like a Mercedes, Justin said. I was completely lost. Changing cars for such a trivial reason seemed unreasonable. Besides, could Betty even drive? I'm not buying an expensive car. Tell her it's not happening, I said firmly. At the time, it was clear to me that this request made no sense. Betty's complaints about the car seemed to never end, and soon she came to me again, asking for money. My medical bills have become more expensive, and I'm falling behind on payments. Could you help me out again? She pleaded. Should I be concerned about your health? I asked, worried. Betty hesitated before responding. Not really. I'm just feeling a bit depressed and having trouble sleeping. The therapist is quite costly. I'm really sorry for asking. I understand. How much do you need this time? I asked. About $1,000, she said. $1,000. I was taken aback. The amount seemed excessive for therapy, though I wasn't well versed in the costs. I'm sorry, I said, but my insurance only covers a limited number of sessions fully, and after that, I have to pay half of the charges. I see, Betty replied. I'll get it by tomorrow. Despite my shock at the amount, I tried to rationalize it, thinking perhaps there were high costs associated with the therapy. Even after that, Betty continued to find reasons to borrow more money, citing medical bills and transportation costs for visiting sick friends. By the time I realized, the total amount she had borrowed had reached $5,000. Although my job was going well, I was becoming increasingly frustrated. That's when I noticed something strange. One day, I couldn't help but peek into Betty's room. To my shock, I found designer bags and wallets neatly displayed on a shelf. I was stunned. How could she afford such luxurious items when she claimed to be struggling financially? She had borrowed so much money from me. Yet her room was filled with expensive goods. I grew increasingly suspicious of the medical bills she'd been asking for. A month later, Betty approached me again, asking for more money with no hint of remorse. Can you please wait? She said casually. I decided it was time to confront her. I called Justin, who seemed unaware of the situation. I need to ask you about Betty, I said. What exactly is she using the money for? What's going on, Molly? Justin asked, clearly confused. Betty mumbled something about therapy sessions and prescriptions, but I pressed further. And what about the designer clothes, bags, and other items? Are you really seeing a therapist? Of course, Betty replied, but her hesitation was clear. If that's the case, show me the receipts. You must have them, right? I demanded. Cornered by my questioning, Betty was at a loss for words. It became evident that she wasn't using the money for her well-being, but for something else entirely. Justin, still puzzled, asked, Wait, what are you guys talking about? Betty has been spending the money she borrowed from me, more than $5,000, on luxury items, I explained. Even so, you're being too aggressive. Can you talk to her more gently? Justin said, his loyalty clearly lying with his mother. In other words, he was a mama's boy. I don't have receipts, Betty admitted. I have been shopping and dining out with friends. I was taken aback. You seem so relaxed despite claiming to be broke. You didn't seem depressed at all. If you've been lying, you need to pay me back immediately. Betty's eyes were full of desperation. I can't come up with that amount right away. Frustrated, I pointed to the designer items in her room. Sell all of those things. If you can't, then move out. Justin, ever the defender, intervened. Hey, you're being unfair. She deserves a little luxury too. I wouldn't call it luxury, I shot back. More than $5,000 has been squandered. This feels like a scam. Justin countered, you're being disrespectful. Just because you're paying the rent doesn't give you the right to be so arrogant. If you're unhappy, then you can leave, he said. What? I was incredulous. I was reaching my boiling point. Steam seemed about to burst from my ears as I glared at him. Did I say anything wrong? You're the one who brought Betty here in the first place. You do nothing but lounge around at home. Thanks to you, I'm stuck living with this mess. You're so condescending, it's infuriating. Get out now, I snapped. Rage consumed me. Fine. Don't regret this, Justin said, grabbing only the essentials and leaving the apartment. I found a new place quickly. As a remote worker, I could do my job from anywhere. I wasn't fixated on living in a high-rise as long as my new home was comfortable. So now, what was next? I had no intention of returning to that place. I had been covering the rent on my own, and I assumed Justin had no interest in taking over. Even if he wanted to, his paycheck wouldn't be enough to cover it. My income far exceeded his. I consulted with a realtor who had assisted me before. I explained that, due to personal reasons, it had become very difficult to manage the monthly rent. Although I could technically afford it, I chose to downplay my situation. I'm sorry to hear that. What would you like to do? The realtor asked. I asked for his help with the situation. One day, while I was working, I received a call from Justin. What's going on? I answered, puzzled. Why didn't you tell me? Justin demanded. I was told to move out because the lease was canceled. Yes, I asked the property agent to break the lease, I explained. Since I don't live there anymore, I don't see why I should continue paying the rent. But my mom and I still live there, Justin protested. I was stunned. What? That's absurd. I don't live there, so why should I keep covering the apartment? If you're in trouble, you should talk to your mom and maybe sell some of her things to raise the money, I suggested. I was incredulous and frustrated. It seemed Justin's sense of entitlement had no bounds. I spoke with a hint of sarcasm. Well, you were the one who wanted to live in a high-rise. If you're not ready to move, why don't you take over the lease yourself? Oh wait, you probably can't afford it with your salary. Justin seemed at a loss for words. You know, you should be able to manage a modest apartment. So go ahead and deal with it. Move in with your mom. Are you kidding me? I retorted. My mom has already used up her savings from selling her house. I don't have any extra funds myself. How do you expect me to find a new place? That's not my problem, he replied. I couldn't understand how he still had no savings when he had been relying on my income. The entitlement and irresponsibility of both him and his mother were astounding. You've brought this upon yourselves with your foolishness, I said. From now on, figure it out on your own. Are you saying we should be homeless? You're still my wife, Justin pleaded. I've told you, figure it out elsewhere. I'm done with this. Goodbye. I hung up the phone. A few minutes later, my phone rang again. It was Betty. Mally, I'm really sorry, she said, her voice trembling. I will pay you back, so please don't kick us out. Her tearful plea surprised and saddened me. I didn't want to lecture her, but I felt I needed to explain. You should live within your means. If you only have a small retirement income, you should adjust your lifestyle accordingly. If you want a higher standard of living, you need to work for it. I knew the harsh reality as a freelancer. If I wanted a certain quality of life, I had to work hard and earn it rather than relying on others. I understand, Betty said. I'm sorry. Please don't let us end up on the street. I'm sorry, I replied, my voice softening. But you need to manage your finances better. The apartment had already been leased to someone else. You really need to move out, I told Betty coldly. This is a matter of regulation. I ended the call with finality. Later, the realtor informed me that Justin and Betty had pleaded with him to keep the lease, but he told them that a new tenant was moving in soon and they had to leave. Even if they had stayed, Justin's salary would have been swallowed up by the rent, leaving them unable to afford anything else. It was absurd for them to expect me to continue supporting their living situation while Justin relied on me. His outbursts had pushed things past the point of no return. I was frustrated and resolved that this was the end. Justin and Betty were left without an apartment and were moving from one motel to another because they couldn't afford the broker's fee or deposit, and no one was willing to be their guarantor. Betty had worked only briefly, so her Social Security payments were minimal, and they were struggling even to eat. I felt they had brought this upon themselves. On my end, I secured another major project and became more financially stable. Looking back on our marriage, I realized that depending solely on a partner, financially or otherwise, is unsustainable. It leads to significant pain when things fall apart. Justin and I separated for a while and eventually divorced. Our feelings had cooled, and there was no reason to stay together. Now that we're estranged, I feel a sense of relief. If I were to marry again, I'd be more discerning. The divorce taught me valuable lessons about life and relationships, and I plan to take my time finding the right partner.
I confronted my husband with the evidence from the detective agency. His face was a mask of resolve as he said, "Roy and I have been having an affair. I'm in love with her, and I've decided to be with her. You need to leave." "Is this really what you want?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "It doesn't matter what happens next," he replied, his tone unyielding. I took a deep breath and thought about my own life. My name is Amy. I'm 37 years old and work in an office. I live with my husband Ted and our 5-year-old daughter Katie. We're close and support each other through our shortcomings. For now, we're happy as a family. Ted is a fantastic cook and always prepares dinner for us. Since I often work late and put in a lot of overtime, I truly appreciate that Ted handles the housework. One day, my husband sustained an unexpected ligament injury. He decided to play basketball with friends for the first time in ages, pushing himself to make a shot despite not having exercised regularly since starting his job. Although he's 5 years younger than me at 32, his lack of fitness showed. It made no sense for him to act so recklessly, especially with a job and a child to consider. When we were dating, his impulsiveness seemed exciting and new, but now it feels like a major flaw. The injury has landed him in the hospital, requiring him to take time off work. That means I'll have to handle the housework and look after our child alone. Adding to the frustration, the injury occurred at a multi-sport facility, not even a proper basketball court. The company could be outraged if they found out, and he might even face termination. I felt a surge of anger and disillusionment. His irresponsible behavior as an adult has become a serious burden. The doctor said he'll need to stay in the hospital for about 2 weeks. I brought him a change of clothes, a phone charger, and other essentials. "Thanks for bringing these, Amy," he said, his voice unusually upbeat. I couldn't hide my frustration. "Why are you so cheerful? Normally you'd be more upset." "Well, what can I do? It was an accident. Plus, I'll use my paid vacation days, so it'll be fine." "Fine. If it weren't for your injury, you could have saved those vacation days for something important like our daughter's kindergarten event or a family trip. That's what they're meant for. Now your coworkers and bosses will have to pick up the slack because you can't come to work. As for our daughter, I'm grateful my mom could step in and help with her. Without her, I wouldn't be able to manage my overtime, and it would create more problems at work. You need to realize the impact of your actions on everyone around you." I must have been really angry because my complaints just spilled out. My husband looked regretful and said, "I'm sorry." "Maybe I overreacted a bit," I admitted, trying to calm down. I told him get better soon, and left the hospital room. Whether my husband was there or not, my work was still incredibly busy. I planned to ask my mother to continue taking care of our daughter for a bit longer. However, when my boss and co-workers learned about my husband's hospitalization, they insisted I didn't need to work overtime. Thanks to their support, I was able to leave work on time, come home early, cook dinner, and enjoy a meal with my daughter. I didn't have to lean too much on my mother, and I was truly grateful for the kindness of my colleagues. A week later, after finishing work, I took my mother and daughter to visit my husband. As we entered his hospital room, I heard him laughing heartily along with a woman's voice. "Oh my God, Ted. Who's that?" I wondered if the woman was one of his colleagues or perhaps a junior from work. When we entered the hospital room, we found a young, slim, and quite attractive nurse there. "Oh, it's your wife and your lovely daughter," she said, giving us a polite bow before leaving the room. "While I'm juggling everything, you're here chatting with a beautiful nurse so casually," I said, my frustration evident. My husband, noticing my icy demeanor, appeared visibly uneasy. "Thanks for coming," he said, attempting to ease the tension. Fortunately, my daughter's presence softened the moment. "Hi, Dad," she said, hugging him tightly and beaming with joy at seeing him for the first time in a week. "Katie, I missed you so much. Is your leg feeling better?" "Now that you're here, Katie, everything will be okay, so you'll be coming home soon." "Yes, I will." "Yay!" Seeing my daughter so happy lifted my spirits as well. I decided to let the scolding wait for another time. After our visit, my mother mentioned that young nurse was calling his name in such a friendly way. "Yeah, she was," I agreed. Her tone did sound quite intimate. Although I found it hard to believe my husband would actually pursue anything with a young, attractive nurse, the thought lingered. Maybe she was looking for someone to be interested in her. They say nurses don't meet many men, so she could be quite forward. Finally, after 2 weeks in the hospital, my husband was discharged. On the day of his release, I visited his room and found him chatting cheerfully with that attractive nurse once again. On the drive home, he seemed unusually bored. I would have expected him to be more enthusiastic about leaving the hospital. This struck me as odd, so I decided to hire a detective agency to investigate. The results came swiftly. After his discharge, he was supposed to go to the hospital for rehabilitation. However, his leg was already healed, and he was lying about needing rehab. Instead, he was visiting the nurse's house. I was stunned. How could my husband be having an affair with her? Or beautiful nurses really drawn to such situations? I confronted my husband with the evidence from the detective agency. He didn't hesitate, saying, "Yes, I'm having an affair. I'm in love with her. I'm going to be with her, and you need to leave. I don't care what happens. I'm in love with her." "Fine. Do whatever you want. This is absurd," I replied. I packed my things, took my daughter, and went to stay with my parents. When I told my mother what had happened, she was furious. "Knew something wasn't right," she said. "Your instincts were spot on, Mom," I acknowledged. After that, I finalized the divorce with the help of a lawyer, securing alimony and my share of the property. We had some disagreements over the division of assets, but I managed to get what I was entitled to and received the funds I deserved. With that, I felt completely free from my past and ready to start anew with my daughter. But as I began my new life, I started receiving numerous calls from an unknown number. Initially, I ignored them, but their persistence eventually got the better of me. "Hello." Finally, you answer. "Who is this?" I demanded. "Well, who are you?" "I'm Anna, Ted's new wife." "Oh, the woman he cheated with. So what do you want?" "You demanded an excessive amount in alimony and property division from my husband. I had a lawyer determine a fair amount." "Then why does he need to sell the house to pay it?" "That's because his salary isn't high enough." "How can his salary be low if he works for a foreign invested company?" "What are you talking about?" "I'm the one working for a foreign invested company, not him." "What do you mean?" "I'm sure my husband lied to you to make himself look better. I often complained to him about my job and the issues I faced, so he probably used that information to mislead you. The truth is, he's just a regular employee at a small company with a salary that's about half of mine." "That's a scam." He claimed he worked for a foreign invested company and that he owned the house outright. But the house is actually in both our names and I made the down payment, so if he wants to stay in the house after the divorce, he'll need to pay me half of its appraised value. Oh no, he's not handsome, doesn't have money, and there's nothing appealing about him. Well, I suppose he wasn't attractive enough for an affair. He was a good dad though. Care how good he is with kids. He cheated on me. I'm sorry to hear that, but you'd better make sure you pay your alimony. If you don't, I'll come after you. Soon after, I received a call from my ex-husband. He was upset because his affair partner had left him just before their wedding. It turned out she had dumped him. But he was the one who lied and tried to impress a beautiful nurse, so he brought this on himself. I told him that if he wanted to address his problems, he should start by earning as much as I do. Then I ended the call. Since then, I only see my ex-husband when my daughter wants to visit him. Each time he sees me, he complains about his situation. I've heard that his injury from playing basketball has caused significant issues at work. His boss is furious, and it seems he'll never get promoted. Honestly, he brought this on himself. Meanwhile, I'm back home, working diligently while my parents help me raise my daughter. Their support allows me to save for her education and take weekend trips with my family. Although I was concerned that the divorce might affect my daughter negatively, she continues to smile just as sweetly as ever. I'm committed to working hard to keep her happy. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one. My mother-in-law insisted I cook even though I was completely exhausted. The aroma of the food was overwhelming for my pregnant body, and I had to rush to the bathroom. I threw up into the toilet, but since I hadn't eaten anything all day because of her relentless demands, it was mostly just liquid. From that moment, I felt like I was in serious trouble. Lisa, how long are you planning to stay in there? We need that food ready. I'm sorry, I managed to reply, my voice weak. Young people these days just lack patience. Pregnancy isn't something you can handle with patience alone. How dare you speak back to me? Just because you're pregnant doesn't give you the right to be so insolent. If you keep this up, I'll knock some sense into you. My name is Lisa, and I'm a 27-year-old office worker. My husband Ken and I have been happily married for 2 years, balancing our careers while supporting each other. Then something wonderful happened. I discovered I was pregnant. Both of us were overjoyed and eagerly anticipating the arrival of our new family member. When I found out I was pregnant, I took maternity leave, and before I knew it, I was in the final month of pregnancy, with the twins due any day. Since we were expecting twins, we had to transfer our care from a general hospital to a private one equipped for emergency surgeries. Managing daily life on my own was becoming increasingly challenging, so my husband suggested that I move in with my mother temporarily. My father passed away when I was young, and now my mother lives alone. Since my husband and my mother get along well, and I'm accustomed to living with her, it seemed like the best option for minimizing stress. So for the past few months, I've been staying with my mother. The hospital where I'll be giving birth is also closer to her house, which has made the transition very comfortable. Just when I was on the verge of giving birth, I was confronted with an unexpected and troubling situation. My mother-in-law. Initially, I had a positive impression of her. She was warm and friendly when we first met, and she was open and engaging at family gatherings. However, as time went on, I began to see a different side of her. Why was my mother-in-law involved now? I had no choice but to ask for her help. My husband, a special design engineer, was dealing with an urgent issue with a local client that only he could resolve, so he needed to visit the client personally. Meanwhile, my mother was hospitalized with appendicitis and would be out of commission for a few days. Concerned about me being alone, my husband suggested that my mother-in-law stay with me to provide support. At the time, I still had a positive view of my mother-in-law, so I was relieved when she agreed to come and help. I thought her presence would bring some much-needed peace of mind. However, the moment she arrived at my house, her demeanor took a turn for the worse. "Oh my God, your house is such a mess. Do you and your mother even clean?" Her comments were harsh and unprovoked. and she even went as far as to insult my mother. I was taken aback as I had always thought of my mother-in-law as a kind person. "Mother, thank you for coming to take care of me for the next few days." "Oh, you must have misunderstood something," she replied dismissively. "What?" "I'm only here to call an ambulance if you need it," she said bluntly. "You'll need to handle the housework yourself." "Oh, don't think you can take advantage of me just because you're pregnant. I'll show you how to clean your house. Now get ready." Reluctantly, I had to comply with my mother-in-law's demands. She had me walking around the house, tidying up every nook and cranny. Then, despite my exhaustion, she insisted I cook. The smell of the food became overwhelming, and I had to rush to the bathroom. I threw up in the toilet, but since I hadn't eaten anything because of the constant demands from my mother-in-law, it was mostly just liquid. From the very first day, I felt like I was in danger. "Hey, Lisa, how long are you going to stay in the bathroom? Come out and cook." "I'm sorry. Young people these days just don't have any patience. Pregnancy isn't something you handle with patience alone. How dare you talk back to me? Just because you're pregnant doesn't give you the right to be so insolent. If you keep this up, I'll knock some sense into you. Tomorrow, we'll do a more thorough cleaning. We'll tackle the yard and get rid of the weeds." "But I don't think I can manage pulling weeds. It's my last month of pregnancy." "Don't be so lazy. You need to strengthen your legs. You've been pampered and living a lazy life. You won't be able to raise a child like that." But the doctor advised me to rest as much as possible. Oh, what I'm talking about. I've already given birth to my son and daughter. Listen to me, not that nonsense from the doctor. You can rest today, but starting tomorrow, I'll be much stricter, so be ready. My mother-in-law grinned as she spoke. It was clear she wasn't interested in teaching me. She was simply enjoying the power of giving orders and mistreating me. Fearing that continuing to follow her demands might put my pregnancy at risk, I tried to resist as much as I could. "That's enough. It's obvious you should follow the doctor's advice. What you're doing is just bullying your daughter-in-law. How dare you speak to me like that? I should have known I couldn't trust you." "Trust me? What are you talking about? I'm saying I never trusted someone raised by a single mother. They don't get proper guidance. That's why I didn't want my son to marry you." "I see, so that's what you really thought." "Yes, that's exactly it. But you can at least give me grandchildren. Once you've given me what I want, I'm done with you." "What do you mean, done?" "Well, ideally, there would be a separation and divorce. My son and the grandchildren can return to our home." "I understand your point. I'll support you through the birth, at the very least." "No, I've had enough." "What are you talking about? Without my help, the babies could be at risk." "Don't be selfish, just do as I say." Just then my husband walked in. "Hey, Mom, what's going on here?" "What? Why are you home? Didn't you go on a business trip?" "Fortunately, everything went smoothly, and I was able to return today. I got a message from Lisa asking for help, so I called her and stayed on the line." "So, you heard everything we discussed?" "Yes, I heard everything." "Mom, what kind of danger are you putting my pregnant wife in?" "Well, when I was pregnant, though medicine is much more advanced now, the doctor's advice is still crucial. Lisa is carrying twins, so she needs even more care than with a single pregnancy. If anything happens to those babies, it's on you." "Oh no. Also, you mocked Lisa's mother for being a single parent." "I didn't realize you were like this. You only see things on the surface. The truth is, single parent. Single parent. I'm sure those children didn't receive a proper upbringing. So does that mean I and everyone who works for her mother are bad people too?" "What?" "When we first met each other's families, I mentioned that my mother is a business owner. I thought that was just a small bar or something. I figured she was just trying to impress." "Oh, I see. I didn't realize you had such a narrow view. I thought you were more open-minded. Lisa's mom is actually the president of the company I used to work for. She was recently featured in a business magazine. It was originally her husband's company, but after he passed away, she took over. She's been successfully running it for over 20 years. Well, I didn't know that. If I had, I might have acted differently. I dislike people who change their behavior based on someone's status. You've been belittling Lisa and my mother-in-law all along, haven't you? I don't want anything to do with you anymore. On top of that, you've endangered my babies. I'm cutting ties with you, Mom. You can't do that. Don't ever come around us again. I'm sorry, please. Sorry? No, I can't forgive you. What you said to Lisa was unacceptable. I'll never be able to forgive you. I'm going to tell Dad and my sister about this. Music. Now, if you cause any more trouble, get out of here. My mother-in-law's face turned pale as my husband insisted she leave. I'm so relieved he came back when he did. If he had left me alone with her, I can't imagine what might have happened. Afterward, my mother-in-law returned to my in-law's house, but my husband had informed my father-in-law about the situation, so my mother-in-law was not allowed inside. She then turned to my sister-in-law for help, but my husband had also filled her in, so she refused to assist her mother as well. Although my sister-in-law has her own issues with her mother-in-law, she couldn't tolerate seeing her mother bully me. With no support from the family, my mother-in-law was left feeling abandoned. Desperate, she went to my father-in-law, begging and pleading. He agreed to let her return home on the condition that she promised never to bully me again. My husband reinforced this by insisting she stay out of our lives completely and warned her that breaking even the smallest promise would result in immediate divorce. Additionally, as a consequence for her actions, he required her to help with his brother's farm for 3 months. My mother-in-law had to work under the sweltering summer heat, pushing her physical limits. It was well-deserved. Meanwhile, I gave birth to healthy twins and my mother was discharged from the hospital, overjoyed to hold her grandchildren. My husband suggested that I stay with my parents for a while to adjust to my new role as a mother. Both my husband and my mother are supportive, helping me with the babies and household chores. With such strong family unity and mutual care, we've been able to live together in peace and harmony. Either way, everyone in my husband's family has visited us except for my mother-in-law. They're all thrilled to meet our children. I'm looking forward to continuing our happy life together with the family. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.
Meet Jody, a 29-year-old who's been working from home for 3 years. Before this setup, she held a consulting position at a major corporation, overseeing online operations. The decision to transition to remote work came unexpectedly when she found out she was pregnant. Opting for freelancing, she bid farewell to her corporate role, embracing the flexibility it offered. With her knack for marketing, she's been successfully managing various projects and directing online operations, bringing in a decent income. However, her husband, Huey, remains somewhat oblivious to the nature and value of her work, seeing it merely as a pastime. The shift to working remotely granted Jody the luxury of time, allowing her to experience a serene pregnancy and safely deliver their daughter, Caddy. Initially, Jody stayed with her parents for support during the first month after Caddy's birth. However, Huey's insistence on her return prompted her to shorten her stay to just a month. Since then, she's been navigating the delicate balance between work and childcare, managing adequately but not without its challenges. Unexpectedly, Olivia, her mother-in-law, proposed the idea of living together. Despite initial reservations about the potential complexities, Jody agreed on the condition of building a duplex to maintain some level of autonomy. The construction proceeded smoothly, and soon they moved into the new home, sharing common spaces. While initially pleased with the arrangement, Jody's contentment soon turned to frustration as Olivia began to impose various household tasks on her, often disrupting her work. Olivia's demands grew incessant, leaving Jody little room to focus on her professional responsibilities. Even when Jody voiced her concerns to Q, she found little support, with him dismissing her grievances and insisting she comply with his mother's requests. This lack of understanding and support from her husband only added to Jody's stress, pushing her mental and physical well-being to its limits. "I'm working hard and you're just playing. That's pathetic." With every complaint I voiced, Huey's attacks escalated, dismissing my efforts as nothing more than play. Even when I insisted that I was seriously working, he refused to believe me. Cody, my father-in-law, seemed to echo Huey and Olivia's sentiments, viewing working from home as little more than a hobby. Their lack of trust in my work left me questioning my own worth, fearing abandonment due to my perceived inadequacy. Then one day, when Hugh was off work and everyone was home, I had Caddy lying next to me as I worked. Huey barged into the room with a loud noise, demanding I come to my parents-in-law's room immediately. Ignoring Caddy's cries and leaving her behind, he must have known she was there. Was the loud noise really necessary? Doubting the sensibility of Hugh and my parents-in-law, who interrupted my work, I picked up the crying Caddy and went downstairs. Entering the living room, I found the parents-in-law and Huey chatting happily. Perhaps I had reached my limit of irritation. Anger started to bubble up inside me. "What is it?" I asked quietly, sitting down with Caddy in my arms. The parents-in-law and Huey continued whispering to each other, their secretive behavior unsettling. Patiently, I waited for them to start the conversation. Then Olivia coughed exaggeratedly and glared at me with surprising words. "You leave this house," she said abruptly. I was confused by Olivia's statement. Did she mean for me to temporarily return to my parents' house? "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to remain calm. Olivia snorted and crossed her arms arrogantly. Even as I looked to Hugh for an explanation, he only smiled continuously. Was he mad, or was it me who was losing it? Why, I wondered. I needed to understand the reason calmly, so I first turned to Olivia and asked her why she said that. Olivia's eyes lit up as if she was glad I asked, and with a smile similar to Huey's, she began to rant about how inadequate I was. "Every day you neglect housework, let Caddy cry incessantly, and just play with your computer and mobile phone. I don't know if you're relying on Huey's salary, but you never listen to advice, just like a parasite," Olivia continued, laughing heartily as if she found it amusing. I apologized for the housework, but I'm doing the basics. I also take good care of Caddy. She's quite a quiet child. I countered Olivia's accusations as much as possible. I can't just let go of my computer and mobile phone. I'm working. Isn't that understandable? Then Huey glared at me. "Are you cheating or what?" he accused, and I stared back at him bewildered by his baseless accusation. "Yes, Jody is cheating," Olivia joined Huey, pointing at me with a look of disgust. I was appalled at their audacity. "I'm not cheating. I can show you my mobile phone right now," I said, taking out my phone to prove my innocence. But Huey just scoffed at it. "Anyone can deceive with that. Can't trust you," he said dismissively. Realizing arguing was pointless, I put away my phone for now. "We don't need someone like you. Parasites should move out immediately," Olivia continued to berate me. "Move out quickly," she continued. I started to feel like maybe leaving with my daughter was the only option. However, there was one reason I couldn't decide to leave just yet: the duplex house. I was the one who paid for it, went to the construction company repeatedly, and was particular about the interior and exterior. Therefore, I couldn't just easily say, "Yes, sure," and leave this place. Moreover, the mortgage is still in my name, and I doubt Huey's salary alone could cover our living expenses. If I leave, my income goes too. "Are you sure he can manage?" I gave them one last chance to reconsider, but Huey scoffed. "What income of yours? Don't make me laugh. We've been living off my salary alone until now." His ignorance made me feel almost sorry for him. I sighed deeply and turned to Olivia. "Hugh is quite a handful, even more than a 6-month-old daughter. Will you be taking care of him?" "Huey is high maintenance. He needs his towel, underwear, and pajamas ready after his bath, his shoes polished daily, his shirts ironed, suits deodorized, and wrinkle-free. If his morning coffee strength is slightly off, he loses his temper like a madman. I doubted Olivia could handle such a needy Huey. I asked, offering Olivia a chance. I can do a better job than you. Who's just been playing around, she scoffed. Besides, if you leave, Huey already has someone else in mind. Olivia, looking pleased, said something that she shouldn't have to hear. What do you mean? I didn't miss a beat and turned my gaze to Huey and Olivia. Olivia showed a look of regret and hastily averted her eyes. Huey glared at Olivia. Why did you say that? He whispered in a low voice. Explain what's going on. From their reactions, I gathered that Huey might have another woman. I glared intensely at Huey, prompting him to speak uncomfortably. Apparently, according to Huey, for several months, he's been seeing a woman named Carol, a young lady in her early 20s who fell for Huey at first sight during a business encounter. After her advances, they started dating. Carol is beautiful, graceful, and has a wonderful personality, Huey says with a laugh. I couldn't believe it considering Huey's looks. I couldn't fathom why such a young woman would be interested in him. Half believing, I asked Huey for proof, thinking if it's true, I'd secure compensation. Huey showed me his WhatsApp history with Carol, and as expected, the messages were mostly from Huey, suggesting dates and compliments. However, Carol seemed disinterested in anything beyond work, politely declining personal interactions. Moreover, she typically responded formally, with no stamps or anything, just simple replies. Stunned by Huey's smug face, I was at a loss for words. I took screenshots of the conversation, transferred them to my phone without permission, and saved them. You never know when they might serve as evidence. Then I'll leave. With all that had transpired, my affection for Huey had cooled off entirely, and I didn't care what happened to them anymore. I'll take Caddy with me, I declared as Huey and the parents-in-law seemed pleased with my decision to leave. Huey's face turned serious, and his raised hands fell. What are you talking about? You can't raise Caddy without any income. That's right, leave Caddy here. Don't be silly, Huey, and the parents-in-law didn't understand why I needed to take her with me. As far as I'm concerned, I don't understand why I should leave my daughter in such a place. I've told you I have an income, and why would I leave her with people who can't even take proper care of her? When Caddy grows up, she'll work hard, and I'll relax. Huey interrupted with his nonsensical talk as I was explaining why I wouldn't leave Caddy. My anger was building. He kept spouting selfish things, not realizing he's digging his own grave. He even plans to use our daughter as a tool. Very well then, let's decide the custody through court. Please prepare a lawyer. Until then, I'll take care of her. But I knew that arguing here would only complicate things further with Huey and the parents-in-law, with unwavering confidence that I wouldn't lose. Once they agreed to legal proceedings, I wasted no time in preparing to leave immediately. Over the next few days, I never left my daughter's side, making all the necessary arrangements. I visited the construction company that had helped build the house and explained everything. I asked if they knew any good real estate agents to sell the house. Nick, the president of the construction company, became my ally, assuring me they'd handle everything. They quickly arranged for the sale, and to my surprise, due to the house's recent construction, pristine condition, and excellent location, it sold for far more than I expected. Simultaneously, they found an apartment for my daughter and me, a great place at the lowest price due to my budget considerations. I expressed my gratitude and began preparing to move immediately. Oh, have you already found a place? While packing my dishes in the living room, Olivia asked with a laugh. Yes. I responded briefly, feeling no need to elaborate. It'll be lonely without you, she said with a big laugh as she walked away. As unpleasant as she was, I looked around. The sofa and dining table I had bought were too large for the apartment, so I decided to sell them. Next was the refrigerator, which I also bought. It was slightly large, but I decided to take it with me and marked it with a sticker. I put stickers on all the furniture and appliances I had bought and wanted to take, and took photos of the items I didn't need with my mobile phone. On moving day, I purposely chose a day when the parents-in-law and Huey were away. Huey was at work. and the parents-in-law were called away to a community gathering. With the divorce papers Huey had given me in hand, I worked with the movers to transport my belongings. I had the construction company arrange for a waste removal service to pick up the unwanted furniture and other items. I steadily progressed with the move, and everything was finished within 2 hours. A few hours later, I left the house with Caddy. As I arranged things in the apartment, the phone rang. It was Olivia. It was already 5 in the evening. I had left before noon, so she must have just realized. I answered the call. "Jody, what's this about the house being empty?" Over the phone, Olivia seemed quite flustered, yelling loudly, "Ah, those things were mine. I disposed of the ones I didn't need. What are you talking about?" I replied calmly, "Well, I bought them. I have receipts and other proofs of purchase, so there's no point in complaining," I said with a laugh, leaving Olivia seemingly at a loss for words, raised in nonsensical uproar. "Oh, and I sold the house, so please vacate within a month," I added cheerfully. Olivia sounded even more astonished. "Why would you do that? Since I built the house, it's in my name and I've been paying the mortgage, so I decided to do as I pleased. So that's that," I stated firmly, and Olivia was still trying to say something, but I hung up the phone. After that, I received numerous calls from the parents-in-law and Huey, but I ignored them all. I needed to arrange the apartment quickly for Caddy's sake and had no time for distractions. I also consulted with a lawyer, and we agreed all future communications would go through them. Months later, after repeated negotiations, I easily won custody of Caddy. The reasons were simple. I had ample financial resources. I had been the one caring for Caddy all along, and working from home allowed me to spend more time with her. Huey, who had assumed he would naturally win custody, was shocked and bitterly spat, "I don't need such a girl anyway," before storming off. Relieved that I could finally live peacefully with my daughter, I felt a sense of calm settle over me. After I left, the parents-in-law and Huey hadn't left yet. What should I do? I received a call from the president of the construction company. I simply replied, "Please evict them," and the president, knowing the situation and seemingly amused, laughed heartily and said, "Leave it to me," before hanging up. I don't know exactly how the formidable-looking president persuaded Hugh and the parents-in-law to leave, but I can't imagine. A few days later, I received a report that they've moved out, and I was impressed by the efficiency. Even that brought relief to my heart. But several months after the divorce, Hugh contacted me. By then, the divorce was final, and the parents-in-law had somewhat given up, so I hadn't blocked his number. But I immediately regretted not changing my mobile phone number or maintaining the block. "Ah, long time. I was just thinking maybe you were starting to miss me by now," he said. "What is he talking about?" I felt more liberated than ever after the divorce, not having to care for him. I listened as Huey continued speaking. He was apparently dumped by Carol and had thought I was his only option. The way he was dumped was laughable. He went to Carol right after our divorce, saying, "We can be together right away." When he told her, "You don't flatter yourself," she responded very coldly, misinterpreting her professional demeanor at the workplace. Hugh visited her at home, resulting in a restraining order from the police. Hugh claimed, "Carol betrayed me. I dumped that woman." But frankly, I had no interest in his story. I hung up the phone while he was still talking and immediately blocked him. I blocked all messages and later changed my phone number, starting anew. I heard from mutual friends that after the incident with Carol, Huey had disputes with clients and was negatively affected at work. Perhaps feeling too uncomfortable, he resigned. Unable to secure another job, he seemed to be struggling financially, constantly asking various people for loans. The parents-in-law are probably taking care of him, but I imagine his modest income is hardly sufficient for a stable life. As for me, I'm living a fulfilling life with Caddy, dedicating my presence solely to her, which brings me the utmost happiness.